Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 181 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, Emerson, and joining me, we have my co-host, Anomaly.
Hello.
And as we are recording this, Echo just had a 2% wipe on Mythic Fyrakk.
They are closing in. That
They
is
are,
for sure.
yeah, everybody's getting close. Liquid has had multiple sub 10% wipes. Liquid's best is 6.5%, six and a half
I think
percent.
it's still 6.5%. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So it's a race. It is genuinely a race.
It is, yeah. Coming down to the wire.
Yeah. So but the expectation, I think, before we get into too much of this, I think everybody expects Fyrakk to die today. I think
I think we will see a kill of Mythic Fire today for sure. Yeah. After the low percentage wipes, I think it's just putting something together that they
yeah.
get to kill it. So
Yeah,
it'll be
but we are not at Mythic Fyrakk yet. Before we talk about race stuff, how was your progression this week?
very easy because I didn't go. So
Thanksgiving stuff?
yeah, so I went home for Thanksgiving, so we left actually Tuesday because I have off Thursday and Friday, and then I just took off Wednesday from work. So
Okay.
went home a little bit earlier. We raid Tuesday, Thursday, so we have a makeup raid this week tomorrow. But the guild we cleared, cleared all of heroic, all of normal on Tuesday. And so we'll have the first three on Mythic tomorrow, plus hopefully a council kill. I think that's who we're working on next. But yeah, they had an easy clear, I guess. I don't know. No real issues from that. So um, yeah, I have not raided. I've not done any raids. Well, I lied. I did LFR to try and get 4 piece.
Yeah.
Did not work out.
Oof.
But I've been stuck since then. Got home on Friday, and I did one key Friday night, so got home at 10, jumped on and did a key late, and then I did 10 or 12 keys yesterday,
Still keying.
which is wild to me because I think that is the most keys I've done
On
in
a
a
week
single
two.
day, yeah, on a week two ever. But yeah, no, it's we did a bunch of keys, did a bunch of rises, falls, and uh and everblooms actually. So
Hey, you guys should
um
do Everbloom this week. How was it?
Easy. We did it on a 20, I want to say, or 19.
Okay.
Eh, Other than like just, I mean, as a healer, just watch pulling too many of the flower packs, and it's not too bad because of bursting.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
other than
they
that, no.
burst.
Yeah, really easy. I mean, the whatever the third boss, the mage boss,
Archmage one, yeah.
still annoying.
Yeah.
She seems to, whenever she does the fire thing, potentially just two-shot someone with the random like damage that goes out. So
That's exciting.
but yeah, as long as you have, I mean, if you're doing it with your guild, like last boss is actually super easy. Just kill the ad before it, yeah, so you don't get a bad overlap of
Yeah.
damage and you're done. So, but no, keys have been fun. I mean, we did a bunch of 20s, got a bunch of portals. So,
Nice.
yeah, it wasn't a bad week in the key world. So bursting, what is it? Bursting in
Entangling.
entangling.
Yeah.
So I will say that I do run with a paladin or two, which makes entangling a joke.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, but other than that, no, it was a fun time, and then we'll see how tomorrow's raid goes. So we'll do
Nice.
a makeup raid tomorrow. So
Nice.
how was your, because you raided on Friday,
Yeah,
right?
we raided Friday.
Yeah.
We So our week one, like we did not end up getting Agira Mythic down. We got Fyrakk Heroic pretty easily. We got Naruto Mythic without too much difficulty, but Agira defied us.
Hmm.
We came in on Friday this week, full cleared Heroic in like an hour 15, which is
Oh, nice.
crazy.
Yeah, crushed it.
That is so fast. And then knocked out the first three of Mythic, two of whom, like, we killed Volcaros and Agira without having killed them before, which is nice.
Nice.
And we had a like 30% wipe on Council of Dreams.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so, and that was like, I was talking a little bit at the pre show because of Thanksgiving stuff. I was like slammed and did, well, Thanksgiving and moving. I have a blurred background so you can't see all the boxes on stream. Um, and so we didn't have healing cooldowns for Council of Dreams.
Nice.
Our healers just straight YOLO'd it.
I like that. I like that.
So yeah, that was we did really good on Friday. And
That's
so
awesome.
that also like that's awesome, but also means that like today I've been prepping for uh Council of Dreams, actually doing healing cooldowns for it.
Nice.
Nimue, which comes right after.
Mm-hmm.
And Laerdar, which is another like Nimue and Laerdar are like people go back and forth on which one you should do first. I don't think there's a clear answer right now.
Yeah, no.
More people have killed Nimue, so we're doing that one first.
Nice.
Um, but it's just like if we go in and we knock out Council in the first hour, there's a real possibility that we take 2 hours on Nimue and knock it out, and then we have an hour on Laerdar. And it's just like we gotta make sure that we're not walking into Laerdar without healing cooldowns.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I have yeah, we had set up council for last week because I think we had like an hour, maybe not that long, maybe like 45 minutes of polls on council last week. So
Yeah,
um we have a little bit of an idea of what to do, but um yeah, no, it'll be interesting to raid on a Monday. We'll see how we do it. So it's a new raid day, new raid week. So
yeah,
yeah, it'll be fun. So well, cool. No, it sounds like we both had a decent week. In terms of rating. Yeah, we'll say, well, I had a really fun week. LFR is always a good time. Um, so
at
I only had to
least
do two bosses, which was nice.
it,
So
at this point in the tier, because every wing has tier items in it, you get a lot of like raiders doing LFR, trying
hmm
to get tier tokens.
dude, it was Tuesday was amazing. I queued into an LFR where there was no lie, I think 8 DPS over like 150,
Yeah,
160,000 damage.
yeah,
We melted.
yeah,
I didn't do anything. It was great.
yeah,
Cleared all the trash. It was, oh God.
yeah,
So luckily luckily Catalyst comes next week. So I'll have 4 piece on Tuesday,
yeah,
whether it happens. So I have a great indestructible chest that I will Catalyst, unless I get something in my vaults, and we'll go from there. So
yeah. Speaking of loot, I mentioned this a little bit before, but I'm playing Blood DK this year, right? We have basically not seen two-handed weapons drop, except
nice.
for the two-handed agility polearm with the proc on it. We've gotten
Oh,
like 5 of them, and we only have two, one person that can actually use them for main spec, and we have
nice.
a Guardian Druid tank. So I have a heroic one.
Oh, really?
I have a
That is
heroic
awesome.
one. I believe it's heroic. It's normally heroic. It's max upgraded. The only other weapon I've been able to get my hands on is a world quest item that max
Oh,
upgraded is eye level 463. And so this Rashon is an agility weapon. It's eye level 476 though with a proc. And so like it ends up being that on single target, it is better for me on blood to be using the agility weapon than the strength weapon that's 13 eye levels lower.
that is awesome.
Uh,
That is awesome.
Now AOE, it's still better to use a strength weapon, but single
Yeah.
target in raid, it's better to use the agility one, which is just so that's my project. Actually, one of my projects for after raid or after the podcast is get in some keys, try and get a weapon.
Nice. Yeah, we were in speaking of weapons, we were in fall a bunch yesterday, like I mentioned. I think of those like 10 or 12 keys I did, probably 3/4 of them were fall
Galakrond's
keys.
Fall, yeah.
Because our rogue needs some daggers. Um
Our rogue pulled a myth track dagger from the vault on Tuesday. They
oh, very
are
nice.
they were so happy about that.
Yeah, I think our rogue, shout out to Enath. I think he's something at like 40 falls at this point this week with no daggers even seen.
Yeah.
So he's down bad a little bit. He's not having a fun time. So but cool. Yeah, no, I like these weeks. It's funny. I personally I'm not a huge fan of Mythic Plus in general, but I've been having an actual blast. And I think it's just because nowadays like Mistweaver I have so many things, so many buttons to press that do keep my group alive. It's actually fun when you have more than
It's
just
amazing
vivify spam to do. Yeah, no, it's
when
been a blast to heal keys. So
when your abilities feel powerful, things are more fun.
yeah, who would have thought that? So
Yeah,
yeah. No, it's awesome. Like even like we were talking, did a bunch of Everblooms and like the AoE on the last boss plus when the adds up and like you get the AoE on the boss, the ad hits and everybody's at like 20% health and I hit a 10 stack Shaylin's gift and everybody's topped. I'm just like, oh, this feels so good. It
yeah,
just feels great.
yeah,
So
yeah. Shout out to BFA for being the worst expansion in yet another way, because that's
oh yeah.
when tanks felt like, unless you were playing like Prot Warrior in keys, tanks felt terrible.
Oh yeah.
Nothing felt powerful. It was awful, absolutely awful. Uh, like yeah, this is much better.
Nice. Nice. Well, cool. Let's I mean we can move through some of the news. We have a couple of things I don't think we've talked about yet, so a couple of rehash things and then um did have a couple of news things before getting I mean the main topic this week I think is honestly going to be just the content we've been doing. We'll sort of continue that conversation, but we do have a couple of news items. First up, there was an interview with David. Or is it David? Sorry. No, I lied. Not David.
Are you talking about
What is
the John Height interview?
John Height? Oh, God, I don't
Yeah,
know why I said David. So John Height interview with an outlet called But Why Though? Interesting name. Where they sort of just gave an interview of just the Warcraft universe in general. So it wasn't WoW specific, but it was sort of just about Warcraft in general. Sort of talked a little bit about like basically creating new experiences in the Warcraft universe, which is something they really haven't done since WoW had come out. So
there's
that's where like Warcraft.
Hearthstone.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess Hearthstone's based on WoW-ish lore. That's
Yeah,
fair. So I guess yeah, since Hearthstone, so you have Hearthstone, and now you have Warcraft Rumble, which is really interesting. So it gave a little bit about trying to put the Warcraft universe in other mediums, so other types of games and things like that. But then he did talk a little bit about two topics I think are kind of interesting here. First up is sort of the classic, what the Wowhead calls the classic conundrum, but it's essentially the idea that like, do they rewrite classic based on what they know today, and like, do they build new story, new content, things like that?
yeah,
And like we've talked about this, and I think you know, I think you were very much in the camp of like, let's do like a classic. Not maybe not fully in this camp, but the idea of doing like a classic expansion, right? Like
yeah.
taking the story in a different direction, building a bunch of facets from there. So John sort of mentions a little bit about that, about how the team kind of right now is not ready to make that leap into doing like entirely new content, but still sort of leave the current story in place and maybe expand on certain areas. That's where like
Yeah.
Season of Discovery comes in, trying to do raids for lower level dungeons, like enhance that type of stuff where the story doesn't really change, but maybe the
It's a
mechanics and
little
like
bit
the way you play
more
change.
of the same story in more depth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So talk a little bit about that, which I think is interesting. I mean, it's funny. I don't know. I mean, if Classic continues with its trajectory, I honestly think we get like essentially two games. Like we get the the retail like current generation type stuff, and then you get TBC version 2.0, whatever an expansion like that's not
Yeah.
TBC but like an actual expansion. Because I think there's still enough people that want like both, and Blizzard still makes enough money from both that it makes
Yeah.
sense. So see something like that. And then there was a big thing on sort of the retail announcement of doing 3 expansions and sort of the story there. So John sort of, I think, made a pretty good point, a pretty big point here that there is another Chris out there. Which, to be fair, this is a Chris. I didn't realize this was the Chris he was talking about until I sort of went back and read a couple of other interviews. But Chris Robinson, who, if you don't know, Chris Robinson was sort of I think he led the art team. I think they said call him senior art director.
Yeah.
But he was like he did a bunch of panels at Blizzard talking about art, like at BlizzCon a couple years ago. And so Chris now is the overall like creative director for World of Warcraft, which includes sort of story narrative and things like that. So you've got Metzen probably at a level above doing more like broad sweeping strokes, and then sort of
Right.
Chris Robinson, sort of the person a little bit lower level in the detail, sort of making sure the WoW story makes sense. Um, but yeah, they sort of talked about how Chris's job right now is to make sure like the next 3 expansions are cool. And they continue to bring up, which I know they made a little bit of a deal about this in BlizzCon, but um, continue to bring up the idea of going back to previous zones. So, or previous areas of the world. So going back to Northrend, going back to
Yeah,
Quel'Thalas, which I think will be cool. I wonder how they do it. Meaning, like, I wonder if they do the Cataclysm change the world, and like that's now the world now, or if they do it like
right.
the Chromie phasing type stuff, where they do with
I think
Undercity.
I think that everything going forward is going to be chromie phasing. That would be my guess. Like we have the blasted
Yeah.
lands that got remade for the is it the Legion launch event?
No, WAD.
WAD launch event.
Right. Yeah.
You can chromie time that. There's other places in the world that are similar to that. I'm blanking right now. Obviously, there's Undercity, right?
Yeah.
Um, but there's a few different zones like that that just got changed. Oh, Silithus,
Yeah. And then the MOP zone, you can go back and forth.
Veil of Eternal Blossoms.
Yeah.
Yep,
Hmm.
yep. So there's those, and that's a little bit functional. Like they don't want to remove a low level questing zone.
That's fair.
Um, like they would not want to remove all of Northrend as leveling content, right?
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
So I suspect we'll get Chromie time, and as you're leveling, you'll go through the old version, and then when you come back for the new expansion stuff, you'll get Chromie timed to the new version.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, um, but yeah, no. So I think it's cool that they've got sort of one person. Seems like one person responsible for the story. Um, at least over the overall direction, and then yeah, the idea of going back into some of these zones, I think would be cool. Like I saw a couple of like fan things around how you split up Quel'Thalas, like and like Silver Moon City, and you have like an alliance side of it and a horde side of it, right? And
Yeah,
what it looks like to fly over there, getting it connected to the continent will be really
that will be
cool.
nice.
So yeah, no, I think there's some interesting stuff going back. So and yeah, I think from a player point of view, it's nice to know that like we have an idea of like building this saga, which to be fair, like let's be honest with ourselves, it's a little bit of a marketing thing too,
Oh
because
yeah,
like you get invested in the story and the war within, and you're like, well, I gotta see how this plays out. And then you're there for like the next like 3-4 years, right?
yeah.
Finishing off the next two expansions. So
There's also like there's one thing that they brought up in this interview that kind of is contrary to the presentation of the World Soul Saga,
mhm.
but is I think relevant, especially given how Shadowlands and BFA went, where they talked a bit about like trying to bring things back down and not lose track of like the individual player and their role in the story.
Mhm.
Which we can all meme about, champion the wounds, right? Like the player had no agency or role. The
Oh
player
yeah.
had no role in the story of BFA. They like the entirety of BFA could have played out without the player character existing at all. Same thing with Shadowlands.
Oh
And
yeah.
in a way, kind of sort of Dragonflight, but the Dragonflight story was so much more grounded in, you know, so it wasn't like, you know, this grand, defeating death story. It was like the centaurs are fighting the other centaurs that are bad,
Yeah.
right?
And we'll help the good ones.
And we'll help one of the sides, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot more low to the ground, a lot more relatable. Um, World Soul Saga isn't like the way they presented it is not. It's a lot closer to the Shadowlands, kind of like big epic light versus void. Um, they did talk about wanting to not lose track of the player in these stories. I'm curious to see how they will pull that off. If we will see, like, I keep bringing it up, the Final Fantasy style of storytelling where you have, in the Final Fantasy lingo, you have the Warrior of Light, who is your player character that
Mhm.
drives things forwards and participates in everything and, picks dialogue options and stuff like that. The dialogue options, for reference, don't do anything other than change animations on the next screen. There's
Right.
no broader implications of it. And sometimes they don't even do that. They'll have cleverly written the next line of dialogue to make sense no matter what you chose.
That's awesome.
But they do that to make it feel more like you're engaged, like you are involved in driving the story forward rather than in Magni's sidecar.
Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I will say that like yeah, hopefully the story itself sort of is like ends up being, I'll say good, right? Something that people enjoy and resonate with. Because like I think the other thing too is thinking back, like going like I haven't replayed like Warcraft 1 or 2 in years, and like I played a ton of Warcraft 3, but I to be fair, haven't replayed it in years. Like I know the story beats of like
Yeah,
how that goes, but having not replayed it, I don't know if it was actually good at the time, right? Like if you like, there's a lot of nostalgia with it. There's a lot of like,
that's
hey, this was like,
heresy.
well, I'm just saying, like, I think
I don't think you're
people,
wrong though.
no, I think it's like you see this great story and you're like, dude, like Arthas, Sylvanas, Malfurion, Illidan, like all these big characters in the Warcraft universe, which nowadays like they're super old in terms of just like when that story was told.
Yeah,
Was it really as great as we thought it was, or is just at the time it was as great, right?
there was a lot
Um,
of, in my opinion. So it's also been a bit since I played it, but in my opinion, there was a lot of rule of cool,
mhm.
right? Like the stuff that happened with Illidan in I don't remember the name of the map, but the forest map, um, was
Oh
very
yeah,
much rule of cool, like where you go and you get the Skull of Gul'dan and you do this, right? Like rule of cool, very shade like morally gray,
yeah,
right? Like they tried to do in BFA morally gray, but they actually like did it more successfully there. And then Arthas's fall is, I think, actually executed. I think if there's one thing that is actually really actually good
yeah,
about Warcraft 3, it is Arthas's fall, where you go through the human campaign and you start dealing with the undead and you start fighting them and you see people dying and turning into zombies, and then you reach Stratholme, and Arthas is like, well, we have we have the opportunity to stop this. We have to stop this. We're going to burn the city. And
yeah.
everybody around him is like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think playing, yeah, and I think that's the idea is like my remembrance of that is like that made sense in the context of the story, which is much different than like Sylvanas burning Darnassus,
Yeah.
right? Or Teldrassil, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a couple of parallels you can make there, but I think like yeah, the story beat wise, like art you can understand why Arthas would make that decision, knowing who
Right.
Arthas was beforehand. Like the Sylvanas thing was so out of character.
Yeah.
Like so
It
yeah.
would have been, it's a little bit fun to think about, like go back and think about like what they could have done to make that make sense, right? Like if there had been a buildup of like the horde coming to rely on some kind of, you know, soul magic, soul
Yeah.
fueled magic, that they needed to power their war machines and were in a losing position and needed more power to
Yeah.
prevent being overrun, then maybe there's like a war crime, but still like you can then, at least it's not completely out of character and just what the hell is going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that one is just straight rule of cool, but it's not this like small rule of cool thing. It's this large, incredibly bad character assassination rule of cool thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, no, I think yeah, I mean like I said, I think overall I think I'm actually excited for this story. Maybe we'll actually bring back Lore Corner. We keep talking about it, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll get a little bit into the story for the War Within as we learn more. But no, I think yeah, I think it's cool that they laid it all out. I mean, the interview is really well done. I think John has a really good idea, him and Holly. I think of the entire sort of Warcraft like games, right? Because there's now three different games, right? So like at least the RPG games or the MMO games, right?
Yeah.
There's three of them. And I think they have a really good handle on what people are excited for. Because I'm excited to play Season of Discovery. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
play a hunter.
That
I'm gonna
actually,
be
so that comes out this week.
yeah, which stinks because
A
I
little
mean
bit.
I will get to it. I think is my thing because I still have a bunch of Mythic Plus to do, and I'm still having fun in retail. Like it's such an awful problem to have that you enjoy too many games to play,
Right.
but no, I think they're doing an awesome job just across the board. And then I boosted a Rogue and Wrath because I'm a dirty person who just pays to get to 80.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm
I'm so
excited to play
disappointed in
Rogue
you.
and Cataclysm because I
Mm-hmm.
wanna I want some legendary deck. I've literally never gotten legendary weapons, and so um, like the old ones, right? I always played a healer back then, and
Yeah.
I was
No,
too.
no
I played a healer
Valenier.
too late. Well, I played a healer too late for
Oh, okay.
Valenier.
You just
Um,
kept main swapping off of the legendary specs.
Basically, yeah, yeah, yeah. So never got Valenier. But yeah, and then missed out on the Rogue Daggers and Kata. So no, I think they're doing a great job across the board. So WoW's in a good spot. Um, but um, but cool. Maybe a couple other things before we get into some of the tuning stuff that they've done this week. Two things I don't think we've talked about that are coming or that are out in. I guess maybe one thing that's coming in 10.2.5, and then one thing that hopefully people get soonish. But I will say that my quest is bugged. So they did put in this patch new Helm enchants, which is a cool thing. So it's an item you get from a quest line where it imbues your helm with a certain buff, a different buff based on your specialization. So there's one for tanks, healers, and then I think it's physical DPS, or sorry, range DPS and melee DPS. So
Yeah.
not physical but range and melee. And there's basically a quest line you do throughout the raid. So it requires you to kill essentially Agira, Laradar, Smolderon, and Tindral, and then gather 50, like, what are they called? Echoed
Echoed
ephemera.
ephemera. Yeah, and this is the part that's bugging for people, right? Is the
Yeah,
ephemera. So
yeah,
it's
so I have 7 ephemera
yeah.
of the
It
50 I need.
it's supposed to be capped at 10 per week.
Hmm.
So if you do a full clear, you're supposed to get 10, um, or up to 10. And
Yep.
there is catch up, so if you miss a week and you come back, you can get more than that. It's like a rolling cap, like crests are on.
Yeah,
Like
basically like Crest, yeah.
you can get 90 week one and then up to 180 week two, depending on how many you got in week one.
Hmm.
Um, so with ephemera, you could get up to 10 week one, up to 20 week two, and so on. And I believe that means you could, in theory, complete it on week 5 of the raid. Um, there was a bug. There was a blue post about it where people were not getting the correct amount of echoed ephemera. I know a
Yeah.
bunch of people got like 3, and yeah,
Oh,
I'm
fun.
also running around. I think I have 11 after 2
Oh, nice.
clears, so a little
Yeah.
bit better than you, but not a whole
Yeah, and
lot.
to be fair, I missed a clear this week, so I mean
Yeah,
that's probably why I missed a couple. But yeah, so but yeah, so hopefully they fix that. And then yeah, these Hellman chants, like I said, by week 5, like you said, sorry, by week 5 we should have them. Interesting couple of procs. I mean, for healers, it's just a damage absorb, plus damage reflect, so it's almost like a thorns. Um, and then a heal over time if that barrier is broken. Um, and then sorry, if it doesn't break, you gain versatility. So it just an extra absorb basically out
it's just
there.
throughput. This is their like soft raid nerf. The tank one, at least
Yeah.
on PTR, was extremely good.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know anything about the range DPS ones and the melee DPS ones are just dots. Uh,
Yeah.
or not dots, but they're just damage procs.
Hmm.
They do AOE. They do the split damage thing where they scale up the total amount of damage, but then they split it between all the targets you hit. So they do work in AOE. They do work in keys. I don't think those ones are like particularly noteworthy. The on raid testing, the tank one was like my number one healing on a couple of the raid tests. So that may not be how it is on live. That is how it was on PTR.
Yeah, but yeah, seem like they're good. Seem like they're good helmet chance. Yeah, you're right. Probably just a soft way to give additional power to players as we come in. So those should be hopefully all that like the ephemeral whatever echoed ephemera. The drop rate is fixed, and we'll be able to hopefully get those shortly. The other thing that was this is a more of a data mine to 10.2.5 thing. I don't think we talked about this, but WoW had made a really say disingenuous post. I'll say, but clickbait as hell. Love them. About raid buff trinkets in 10.2.5. And so a bunch of green items, essentially green quality items, showed up with different like player buffs. So like there was one for Chaos Brand, which is of course the Demon Hunter ability that does 5% additional magical damage to targets. There was one for Bloodlust. There was another for Ankh, essentially. And so basically, they asked the question of, are these the new Ray buff trinkets? However, I think they sort of snuck this in here, like as a footnote, which is like, or they could just be for the follower NPC dungeon system, which
So
kind
my
of makes a little bit more sense.
I mean, the bloodlust and the Ankh, I agree with. Like, it makes more sense for those to be follower ones. You don't need the Demon Hunter debuff for follower dungeons.
That is, I mean,
You don't.
true,
Um,
but it's like a nice to have. Like, it's just a weird thing to put on a trinket, right? Like, the idea is, do you sacrifice a DPS, or even, I mean, honestly, do you sacrifice a player's trinket slot? It could be any
yeah.
player,
I
right?
mean, what it really is if you see these and you have them on the tier, you go, who has the worst second trinket?
Yeah,
Okay, you're wearing a debuff.
yeah, which is going to be healers. So,
Yeah.
welcome.
Or
Great, just
tanks.
slam it on a healer.
Sometimes
That's true.
the second tank trinket is like pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, oh God, we got the cheat death trinket for Argo. I think it's sorry. Speaking of trinkets, a little side. I think it's rowdy. There's
Yeah.
an absorb trinket too that's really good. Just fucking wild.
Which
Which I'm
one's
tagging
that?
with that.
Are you talking about the last tier Fester Mouth one?
Maybe I don't
Maybe.
know. It does a huge amount of absorb. He puts a huge absorb on you.
Yeah, I mean that's probably last year's Fester Mouth. I don't
Yeah,
know of any this tier that do that, but maybe I'm out of touch because
yeah.
Blood DK doesn't need it.
God,
Blood
stupid. Yeah.
DK is sturdy.
No, but yeah, there's some new items that contain essentially player skills or buffs from certain classes have shown up. So we'll see exactly what they're used for. I would imagine it's either Blizzard testing something or like hopefully not required for a
And
raid. It's just
that's the other thing that these could be too, is they could just be internal testing items that are not intended for use. Although those would normally be tagged with the do not translate tag.
yeah,
They would have like the DNT in brackets if you've seen those on Wowhead before. Those are usually internal things that they don't care about translating. They're just using it internally and testing stuff, and or
right.
it's never going to show up in an actual game client. Maybe it shows up on like Warcraft logs or in Wowhead, but it's never actually going to show up in the game client, so they don't care about translating it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, we'll see. I guess we'll see more in 10.10.25. God, it's a little mouthful. Before yeah, before too long. So we'll see if they actually do anything with these. But there's a handful of those put in there. So um well, cool. I think then now onto some of like our larger topics of the day. We did get a ton of tuning, as we always do, the second week, and a ton of Mythic Plus tuning, which I actually did want to spend some time going through some of this because
Yeah,
having done a lot of keys, I think it's interesting to see what they are and aren't changing. Um, so I don't know how many keys you've done between this week and last week, but probably makes sense maybe to just go a little bit dungeon by dungeon. We have to touch on everything, but
yeah,
a couple of big ones. So out of the gate, a tall Dazar, we'll start there. Did get a bunch of sort of changes this week. A lot of changes in terms of like the packs in the middle. So the Sarids, Thrash, some of the Wildfire, proc or periodic rate. Uh, actually ticking faster, so a little bit more damage going out, and then just general sort of ups and so sort of ebbs and flows. I'll say in general, like the that dungeon at Taldazar seems very similar difficulty wise as to was previously. Um, the Razan is Razan, not a big deal. Center section, not a big deal. I will say and then you have the right and the left trash. We'll say at the start,
yeah.
which I think still has the same issue. Not issue, but the same difficulty it had when it was a regular dungeon. Is right side super healer focus. Like if you have a bad healer, you're gonna have a bad time if you clear the right side to the totem boss. And then the left side seems much more like if you have good interrupts, good stuns, good just group coordination. It seems like you make that one a joke. So if you don't have that, also going to be a rough time in there. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
we
the right side. The thing that I learned about the right side is that Shield Bash, which is a mechanic that I didn't really care about in BFA when this was current, is something that I very much care about now. That
oh
thing
yeah,
crushes you. Fervent Strike no longer Fervent Strikes, which is a fun sentence to say,
yep,
which is a huge quality of life improvement, especially with stuff like Entangling actually forcing you individually as a tank to move.
hmm
But yeah, I think overall, like they buffed some stuff, right, on this dungeon. The most relevant ones are that they buffed the priestess boss, right? The ads have more health, which is very funny to me, given that if you could not kill them, you already didn't kill them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like ideally, you like paralysis 1, hex 1. I actually don't know if you can hex them. Paralysis 1, root 1. You only get like 3 maybe on most key levels, so you
Yeah.
just like deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, we did, or you just bring 2 druids that both have mass entanglement and
Yeah,
you never look at them
yeah,
again. Yeah.
yeah. The
Yeah.
other boss change I think is relevant is the asthma one.
Yeah, which was surprising.
Yeah.
So they made Yasma's Racking Pain, which is a cast time that puts a dot on someone that does a fairly substantial amount of initial damage and then ticks on them for a period of time. They made it uninterruptible and no longer a curse. So essentially, it's uninterruptible single target damage that you have to heal through as a healer. Um, Honestly, we did it. I did this one on I think it was a 19, like I said, 18 or 19. Wasn't terrible. I'll say that the problem with the dot is essentially when you get a slight overlap between that and then the
Souls.
where the souls ads that spawn,
Yeah.
that person is generally in trouble. And I think as a healer too, particularly in melee as a healer, it's sometimes difficult where you're stuck trying to dodge spiders, but then also making sure you don't not pay attention to that person for more than like a second or two.
Yeah.
Um,
This was a super weird one to me because Yasma's already kind of where all those Archies die.
yeah.
Like everything up to this point is fairly easy.
Hmm.
Not a whole lot's going on. Probably the most frequent thing that I've seen wipe groups outside of Yasma is accidentally face pulling extra stuff when you're going right side.
Yep.
That'll kill you.
Hmm.
And then Razan can kill you, and then the Volcall totems messing up the totems, so you kill them at the wrong times, and you have to do it twice.
Yep.
Ra-
I've seen that. Yeah.
yeah, but like Razan Pursuit, if somebody messes up their immune or doesn't run away in time, like that boss can spiral relatively quickly if somebody gets eaten.
Yeah, I had speaking of Razan getting eaten, I had a demon hunter do the thing you should kind of do, but he tried to play the edge a little bit too much, got pursuit targeted, then essentially jumped and fell rushed out. But his position never updated on the server. So he's literally in his view and everybody else's view, he's fell rushed all the way out, perfectly fine. And then like half a second later, he's getting eaten and dies.
Yeah, position for like bosses and things generally doesn't update until your feet touch the ground.
Yeah,
Fun
yeah.
fact.
Yeah, it was a fun start to that key. But no, I mean yeah, that's yeah, the Yasma stuff is interesting. Definitely you have to pay attention now. Put that debuff on your bars if you haven't, because like I've never, to be fair, I didn't realize what Racking Pain did until people started dying, and I was like, can we interrupt that? And then they'd be like, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
I mean, it used to
okay,
just be like that's what you did as a tank is you kicked that and you lived skewer. And
yeah,
living skewer is not too hard anymore. Just tanks are more powerful. Again, like in BFA, tanks sucked.
yeah,
Tanks really sucked. Nothing you did was powerful. It was awful. Skewer was very threatening. Skewer is no longer very threatening. Like
yeah,
you need to use a defensive on it, but you have a plethora of defensives to use, so it's not an issue. Which
yeah,
means the only thing you're really doing as a tank on that fight is like walking backwards in a circle. So it's kind of it went from like you're walking backwards in a circle, but also have to make sure you stay in range to do the kick, to just like walking backwards in the circle. That's it. That's the whole fight.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, so that's I think that's they also adjusted I think earlier this week the Ataldazar count, which
Yeah.
which is fine. You just have to pull. They added
Yeah.
more counts. So you have to pull a little bit more.
I
But
I think this is fine. It just pushes you into doing shroud skips a little bit less.
yeah,
Like shrouded mass invis skips just a little bit less. And that's fine. Like you already like the routes that I would do in BFA more or less still work. The only difference is that like now you pull the dinosaurs, which they nerfed. The dinosaurs in the middle got
Yeah.
nerfed. So and people that's the other place that used to wipe keys. People failing
Yeah.
to walk past the dinosaurs.
Yeah. Or while walking past, grabbing a random pterodactyl thing.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
I pull those, and honestly, part of the reason I
yeah.
pull those is because people keep face pulling them. So
Yeah.
at least I could just pull them and we'll kill them and we'll plan it. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So that's all Teldas are. I mean, yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that. We did last night. Our route was pulling literally everything in the middle,
yeah,
and then invis potting past like half the trash on the right to pull the boss. So,
really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So you basically skip like the you get
Distinguished
all the
trash.
invis stuff. You get all the invis stuff on the right.
Yeah.
Um, and then you basically you walk past the typical pack you typically skip,
Yeah.
and then you get to that last pack before you go over the little bridge to the final area.
Yeah.
You invis pop past that pack,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
you
That
invis
pack
past
does
that one.
suck. I can definitely see
Yeah,
skipping that one.
yeah. So, but no, it was not bad, not bad. They also made a bunch of adjustments. Maybe another dungeon, Throne of the Tides. Lots of, we'll say, nerfs to Throne of the Tides. So
Yes.
I think is fair. Particularly nerfs to the final tunnel, to the final boss, the gauntlet. So they've basically reduced the total number of the little ad spawns, which I think is awesome because that is the worst part about that dungeon. Essentially now, specifically now with bursting too, it's very much like slightly annoying to get bursting stacks plus those mob stacks. They've also reduced in that same hallway the big water elementals, their swell, their AoE ability,
Yep.
by a fair amount, which is awesome. And then they've also lowered the health of the goblins, well, particularly the aqua mages,
Yes.
which which is good to kill those a little bit faster. So,
Yeah. So
um,
the way we pull this now, is basically you do it in. So you have the goblin pack up at the top of the stairs. That's not part of the
mhm,
gauntlet. We just pull those
okay.
separately. Then there's a patrolling swell that we do with a pack of 4 goblins, and
Mhm.
another patrolling swell that we do with the second pack of 4 goblins, and then the double swell, and
At
that's
the
it.
end, yeah.
That's the whole gauntlet.
Yeah. I think in at least in my pug groups, what I found is that people on that second goblin pack need
Yeah.
to move into the pack.
Yes. Yeah.
So to
That is
basically
super
stop stuff
important.
from coming in the back, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it can get a little hairy. They also did something that I find funny because I always forget about this pull, but it's actually god awful. Is the Snapdragons, basically the dog pack, right before you get to the first boss in that big room where you actually fight the
The
second
one with like
boss.
8 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they reduced essentially the health of those mobs. And then they also increased the tick rate of the razor jaws, which is I think the dot they put on people, right?
Yeah. The
Um,
other way, decrease the tick rate. It takes 50%
one
less
point,
often.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, oh yeah, you're right. So they increased the time between ticks.
Yes.
Yeah, fair
Yeah.
enough, fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, my way did not make
Which
sense.
is super relevant. That pull, you basically still need to kite as a tank if you are pulling that at a decent key level, like a 20 plus
Hmm.
key level, because they just don't die quickly enough. And if you go to 20 stacks to the dot, you're just gonna die.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can dwarf it off, so dwarf supremacy still continues.
Nice.
I expect that in 11.0 we're going to see dwarf racial nerfs. That's my making that prediction now.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, but you can dwarf it off, you can cauterize it off, but it's still like they don't give you an opportunity to drop stacks unless you kite, and then you can drop stacks and keep from going to crazy high number and getting one
Yeah.
shot by
And
a dock tick.
it's funny as a healer um in that part. Typically it's not that sometimes the tank's getting too many stacks, but it's typically the start when the dogs start jumping and like
Yeah,
fixating people that it becomes just like really annoying
yeah,
to deal with. So
yeah.
um but yeah, some solid. They also did a bunch of, well, it's not a bunch of, but a handful of nerfs to the final to Azumat, the final
Yes.
boss. Um, basically like reducing the pool damage, I believe, by a fair amount, and then increasing the cleansing
How much cleaning fluid you
beam.
get? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
by an additional 2 seconds. I think you have to clean the floor.
Now,
Um,
the most relevant nerf from this is that your
Oh,
tank no longer gets one shot if they pull from slightly outside of melee range,
yeah, that's
which
true.
I had a couple times where I you know ran in, pushed taunt, got hit for all of my health, and went into purgatory.
Yeah,
That foul bolt ability now won't go off in the first 8 seconds of the fight, basically, so you have time to waddle your ass into melee range.
nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, that's a solid change there to throne. But yeah, so nerfs there, and then they also did nerf rise. So the upper, I guess people call it upper, or like the second half.
We'll call it
Uh,
rise.
yeah, I don't know. People in my guild still call it upper and lower.
Yeah, they're
From
wrong.
Karazhan days. But yeah, they nerfed the first boss in Rise, Tear the Infinite Keeper. Basically, the barrier absorb is lowered. The sorry. So the barrier duration is lowered. It also they've done work on the time between double and triple strike. So a larger cooldown between
They
those.
basically nerfed
Um,
the trash in the sand room.
yeah,
Like most of that trash ate nerfs. Like the untwist, which is the tank frontal that goes off, 20% less. Like all the ads have 10% less health in there now. All the ads they explode when they die. That explosion does half as much damage. Like loads of nerfs there.
yeah, yeah. So solid nerfs there, and then nerfs to the last boss from both a health perspective. So 10% off the last boss's health, along with infinite corruption, which is the large AOE damage, I believe,
Yeah.
has been reduced by 20%, which still will kill you if you're like our idiot warlock and is worried about casting their staff on the boss and their camera gets shot up straight up in the air and they can't see the ground and just stand in puddles.
Yeah.
Not like we almost wiped to someone in my guild doing that. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That boss, that key lives and dies by that boss. That's you can do everything else in that key perfectly. The timer is fairly tight. And if you wipe on that last boss, you've wiped your key.
Yeah.
It is a long fight. It is a grueling fight. It is a still very numerically tight
Yeah,
encounter.
and don't
And
and don't go in there with a warrior tank
oh yeah,
because the breath dot plus dot just crushes
oh yeah.
warriors.
I did that key for the first time yesterday. We were doing I think a 21 or 22. First time on Tyrannical, and
Hmm.
I was really surprised how significant. I was expecting the upfront damage to kill me. The dot is the real killer there.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so what I ended up having to do is where the two ads spawn and you get the tank breath right after,
Hmm.
but then you run away. Like I'm playing a Death Knight, I don't have anything to Death Strike. I'm gonna die. But you can AMS and prevent the dot if you fully absorb the hit. So you hit like a DR and AMS and you don't get the dot, and then
That's
you just
nice.
walk over and you still have to very slowly. I'm gonna next time we do it, I'm getting a priest or an evoker to rescue me over there after the
Yeah,
breath
yeah.
to make it easier because the ads start casting this really heavy magic damage like fireball thing. It's not called fireball. It's basically fireball.
Yeah.
Um, and they cast it on DPS and they get very unhappy and ask me to taunt. I'm like, I'm
Yes.
trying. I am 47
I'm
yards away.
I'm trying my hardest to get over there to you. Yeah, no, yeah, it's yeah, that boss is unfun, I'll say this week. But no, I think those are the major, I think, dungeons this week that caught nerfs. Minor stuff across the board elsewhere, um, like in Dark Heart Thicket, Oak Heart, uh, Crushing Grip throw was reduced by 50%. So minor, reduction there. Um,
They didn't nerf the
so
last boss though. That's
Dark Heart,
always of Dark Heart. That's the one that actually is a problem. Although I think as people get used to doing the thing again, where you try and keep the boss from getting hit by the swirlies,
yeah.
as people get more used to that, it'll stop being as much of an issue. But
Yeah, and as people realize that like you kind of want to group on the one person with the one debuff and run away with the person with the other debuff and not mix those up. Like some pugs I've done that key with last week would like
mm-hmm.
run on top of me with the fear thing and just fear me then 30 yards away from everybody else. I'm like, Come on, buds. But no, I think we'll continue to see some more nerfs. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something to honestly to Chrono Lord Dios, last boss of Rise for
Yeah.
Warriors, because Warriors are just that key. Honestly, anything higher than a 20 seems almost unattainable without some like very specific comps, just for the amount of magic damage that they take. So,
Yeah, the caster adds, like, it is a magic bolt. It's
oh yeah,
really that it's really bad.
yeah.
Really, really bad. That fight is rough.
Yeah, it's a yeah, which is such a such a contrast from Fall, which is a free key every week. They have to adjust the timer to Fall because like we have fully
They can
we
take
fully
like two
wiped
minutes off the timer from fall and put those 2 minutes on the timer to rise.
Rise. Yeah, yeah, and I think honestly, I think 2 minutes might not be enough
Yeah.
because Fall is like it. Yeah, it seemed like we fully wiped I think twice in Fall and
And still
still
time the
two
key.
chested, still
Yeah.
two chested it. Like I
Yeah.
think it was or very close to two
Yeah.
chesting. So yeah, it's yeah, that fight is or that entire key seems super free
Yeah.
on either week. So, um,
Do you
but cool. And
wanna
then
you wanna hop back over to the race the world first stuff? Uh,
yeah, yeah,
I will say that there has been zero additional progress.
yeah. From either
Neither team has improved on their best percent.
yeah. So we have what Echo at 1.8. They're calling it
Yeah,
percent, and Liquid still at
six and a half.
5.6 or 6.5. So,
6.5.
um, but yeah. So it's a close race. There was so last night we will say late breaking. There was an HP nerf. I believe it was last night.
Yeah,
4%. So Fyrakk went from 1.54 billion to 1.48 billion health. So a 4% health nerf, a minor, but I think it makes sense.
I think it puts this boss in killable range. This
Yeah,
is they have not really done significant nerfs to bosses during Prog this tier, other than like the Tindril ate a 20% HP nerf this week.
yeah,
That's wild.
which is fair, I'll say.
Yeah, that boss needs a lot more than that before we fucking pull it. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah, it looks interesting to say the least. But no, but yeah, so the 4% I think makes sense. I think Echo's 2% wipe, they had 70 or 80% energy on the boss with no seeds left. So like
Yeah,
essentially right before the enrage.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, the mythic mechanics on this boss look honestly absolutely wild. So for those of you who
yeah.
have not been watching the race, you still have in the final phase 3, you still have the 4 good seeds, we'll say, that
Yep.
you use to survive. I think it's called Apocalypse Roar, the big AoE damage. And essentially in normal and heroic, you have essentially four rotations of the boss gaining 100% energy. Or I guess it's 5 to be fair, because you'll die on the 5th one. To use these seeds to get yourself safe and then DPS the boss down. The mythic mechanic here is that every time you use one of those 4 good seeds, 2 corrupted seeds spawn, which function just like normal seeds with we'll say 2 main differences. Every second they're not picked up, they pulse AoE damage on the raid.
And
And when
like
you do,
the bombs on Sarkareth.
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, good point. And then once they are picked up, they do a stacking dot or damage to the person holding them directly, which
Which is like
is
Halandra's bombs.
yeah, which is just an awful combination. So what that essentially means is you start that phase 3 with just 4 good seeds. Use your first seed. Now you have 3 good seeds and 2 bad seeds. Then it's 2 good seeds, 4 bad seeds. Then it's 1 good seed, 6 bad seeds, and it's 8 bad seeds. Which watching like Echoes pull that 2% pull is just heartbreaking. While you watch like
They
somebody died with a seed and then like
also
just
like
uh,
to be the other bit.
oh yeah,
If a
sorry.
seed gets hit, if a bad seed gets hit by a mechanic, it's an instant raid wipe, just like Halandra's. They are in a lot of ways basically just Halandra's bombs,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
So
that's
and
how
that,
they
and that
wiped it 2%.
yeah, and that's also I guess the good seeds hit that same thing. So if you have blaze and you're holding a seed, you have to drop the seed and move the blaze out. What are they called? The wildfires, I want to say. But
Yeah,
the
something like
the
that.
random circles on the floor, they also do it. The tornadoes that spin around, if they clip a seed, that also triggers the raid wipe. So yeah, there's literally just it's any damage the seed takes is a raid wipe, which
Yeah,
is nuts, like
yeah,
absolutely wild in
yeah,
terms of craziness. So if you guys aren't watching it, I highly suggest you turn on some streams now. Like we said, boss dies today, But and if you don't have a stream on, at least watching this phase 3 sounds, it's basically like a harder version of Halandris, like a
Yeah.
much harder version of Halandris, only
Oh, shorter but harder. Yeah.
yeah, shorter but harder. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and you actually get to this phase after phase 1 and 2, which are no still not
right.
easy.
That's not even mentioning all the changes to the mythic version of phase 1 and phase 2, which there are many. Like in phase 1, if you've done that on heroic or normal, you would know that some people get the like circles on them that they have to take and put next to the old fire. On
Hmm.
mythic, those are group soaks.
Yep.
Um, and on Mythic, when he does Dream Rend, in phase 1 still, the fire circles near it basically send out orbs at where you are standing. So you basically like bait all the orbs, move out, bait more orbs, move out. But that means that you can't just like stand in a spirit link totem or something for the whole duration of the Dream Rend.
Yeah.
And at the intermission, now you have, instead of just the orange orbs that you have to catch, or they, blow up on the boss, and they don't literally wipe you on heroic, but it's bad.
Yeah.
You shouldn't let them touch the boss. Um, on Mythic, they do just wipe you. But now there are also purple ones, and you get a color, and you have to soak only the ones that are your color. And also, it's a private aura, so they're using a macro.
Oh, so yeah.
It's so messy. They have like, if you are orange, push the macro, and then they have an assignment week aura that like assigns you based on your macro push to either do an orange soak or a purple soak. And
Yeah.
then you go and you do those, and if you soak the wrong color, instant raid wipe.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I mean P2 adds even additional ads. So there's now a purple and there's a purple like shadow, I guess,
One of the
flame
one
ad.
of the one of the
Colossi.
elementals becomes purple, and the other one stays orange. So
Yeah.
you still have two, I think, right?
Yep. You still have one of each. Well, you still have one of each color,
Yeah,
right? But then they also add a new like stun and dispel mechanic where like certain
yeah,
people get a purple debuff that will stun them after a period of time, and then if you have a red debuff, you have to run over that person to clear their stun. They're also doing a macro thing for that too, because that's
yeah,
all private auras. So yeah, and then there's big adds to heal, which of course, heal the tree for more, but it's then a large add to heal. So
yep,
yeah, there's just it's a lot more on Mythic, like a lot more mechanics to worry about. So
yeah,
yeah, like I said, I think they're gonna have to, before I kill this boss, or really like I'll say we kill this boss, there's gonna have to be some some changes
yeah.
because it looks absolutely wild watching them do
I
this.
do
So
think, like, unlike Tindril, I think Tindril looks like seriously unfun to do. Like, it
yeah.
does not look like a good time. I think Fyrakk looks like a blast.
Yeah, I think with Fyrakk, they're like I think the problem with Tindril, and this for me specifically, is the seed mechanic that you have to
Yeah,
run over. Like that being so random, I think is why I will ultimately dislike that boss. Because losing polls to like, oh, I ran to the spot I normally run to, but there was only one seed and there was like three people assigned to this position, and like
yeah.
we
Uh,
tried to adjust. Yeah, it's
and
gonna be
that's like
annoying, I think.
their tank positioning on that fight was set up in a specific way to try and get seeds to spawn in a specific, like, more or less
Yeah,
consistent locations. Um, I think that one of the first nerfs we'll see to that fight is reducing the number of seeds,
yeah,
because
that makes sense.
that just makes it easier. So the mythic mechanic for that, I don't know if we even talked about it, but the mythic mechanic for that is uh, the tendril seeds on mythic. On heroic, if you soak multiple, you get a stacking debuff that increases the damage from soaking it. On mythic, if you soak a second one after soaking one, you spawn a tree that does pulsing like raid wide AoE, and the
Just a
raid
right
wide
way.
AoE is like 400k.
Yeah, it's
It
just a
just
radar. Which I
it
think it's the same AoE that happens if you
if you
don't soak.
fail to
Yeah,
soak it, yeah.
yeah,
So like
yeah. No.
if they cut the number of seeds, like right now you get legitimately 18 or 20 seeds.
Hmm.
If you reduce that, I mean, there's no public logs of it. I don't think so. I don't know, but it looks like basically everybody has to soak one.
Yeah,
Maybe a couple people get out of jail. If they cut it down to like 12, right? Most people have to soak one. Everybody has to try and help. Not
right.
everybody has to
Yeah,
actually find one and soak it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, well, I mean, definitely we'll see some changes to those fights either this week or next week. I think if we get, well, once we get a kill this week, I definitely think we'll see some adjustments to some of those later later mythic bosses, but yeah, I think the other thing too is like we've talked a lot about. I just want to give one quick shout out. We talked a lot about Echo and Liquid being sort of the front runners, but Method is solidly in third place, which is I think a really good position from them. They were not. I mean, I wouldn't say they're neck and neck
They're
with
not.
Liquid and
They're
Echo,
not.
but they're not like a step below them, right? They're probably like a half
Yeah.
step. They're getting better, which looks really cool. And then the other big thing is instant dollars from just a US perspective,
Yep.
looking real good. They had I don't think we talked about this last week, but they were crushing some of the, basically, they got to smolder on before
Most.
anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were definitely, as they're going through the raid, like they had a couple of tweets from their like guild account that was like, hey, does anybody have any strats for like Naimu or anybody have any strats for Laradar? Like we're not
Yeah.
used to making our own strats or whatever. I thought that was
We're
pretty
not
funny.
really a making strat guild. We're more of a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
copying
They're like
strat
Echo.
guild.
Yeah, they're like Echo and Liquid. Can you guys hurry up? Because we need somebody to give us strats for this. So
Yeah.
no, I think it was it's good for them. I think it kind of sucks that BDG or Big Dumb Guild sort of fallen off slightly. They're still I think third in the US, so they're not super far
Yeah.
behind. But
Like for
um,
reference on where things are now, instant dollars is at 10% on Tindril Mythic.
mhm.
And BDG is at 15%.
Yeah,
Skyline is at 15% as well, but Skyline has 860 wipes.
I thought
So
Skyline killed it. I thought I saw that pop up.
I mean, there is a Chinese slash Taiwanese guild that killed it. I don't think
Oh,
it's
so not
Skyline.
Skyline. Yeah, my fault.
Skyline is listed with here. I have the page pulled up. Yeah, Skyline is listed with the anglicized name here.
Gotcha.
There is another guild. I do not read whatever variant of characters
Yeah,
these are. Sorry, I do not know how to say this.
neither do I.
There,
Yeah, I thought that was.
there is
Yeah, I
another
thought that was
Chinese guild
Skyline's.
that has killed Tindril. It might be Skyline and it's incorrectly double listed,
Hmm.
which would suck. But I don't think it is. There were two Chinese guilds in the race,
Yeah.
so I think it is that second one that got it.
860 pulls on
Yeah,
that bot. That is
yeah.
wild.
Instant dollars for reference, 370 and is 5% further ahead.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
not.
wild.
It's not exactly like loss percent's not exactly the best like how you can measure things, but
Yeah,
they're deep into both of them are deep into phase 3.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I think that's everything for today. Unless you had anything else you wanted to cover.
No, I think that is it. Echo just had another good wipe that they lost. I did not see what made them lose it. But
Echo's got it locked in, man. They're looking good.
looking good. Echo, Liquid, not doing too shabby either. We'll see if they can pull out the win here. But it is really
It's close.
this is the closest race we've had, and honestly, the fact that like there haven't been big nerfs or anything like that, kind of nice. We
Yeah.
will hopefully see some pretty major ones to Tindril at least before the rest of the world gets there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. 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 Yes.
we shall
Yes.
see. But
Mhm.
that I think, like you said, is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoy this podcast and you want to support it and the other work that we do over at the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. It is the best place to chat about the Race to World First and how there is exactly one kind of monk in it, and it's not Brewmaster for once.
Miss Weaver, let's go.
And or F1, which is the other thing people will not stop talking about.
Hey, it's the final race today. You got 3 months. You got 97 days until testing in Bahrain. So
Some of those words I know. I know that Bahrain is a place.
it is. It is.
Yep. But that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.